Caroline used 240's study guides in preparation for the EC-6 ELA exam. She wrote to let us know that not only did she pass, she did it with flying colors. Seeing a review like that gets me so fired up. Hi, I'm Emma. I spent years in the classroom as an elementary school teacher, and now I work with 240 to help teachers pass their certification exams. And today, I'm going to help you. This video is going to prepare you for the core subjects EC-6 English Language Arts and Reading subtest. And this video is going to cover 3 things: what's on the test and how to study for it, the biggest concepts you'll need to know for test day, and we're going to look at a few practice questions. Let's jump right in. Now, the core subjects EC-6 English Language Arts and Reading test consists of 10 areas called competencies. These are oral language, word analysis and identification skills, reading fluency, reading comprehension and applications, vocabulary development, reading inquiry and research, writing conventions, written communication, viewing and representing, and assessment of developing literacy. I know, that's a lot. Each competency has descriptive statements that give more detail, but still not quite enough, about what will be covered on your exam. We'll go over a key concept from each competency. Now, if you want to see everything this exam covers, get a 240 study guide. The link is below. And let me go ahead and give you a tip. A lot of these questions are scenario-based. This means not only do you need to know the language arts content, but you'll have to apply it to a variety of teaching situations to find your best answer for the questions. Okay, let's take it from the top and talk about some of the most important things to know. The first competency is oral language. This involves the listening and speaking skills students need to develop as the foundation for learning to read. To develop their language skills, students need many opportunities to speak to a variety of audiences. Audiences makes it sound like they're doing public speaking gigs. Don't worry, it's nothing like that. It just means that students need lots of practice talking with one partner, a small group of classmates, or participating in a whole group discussion. So you don't have to worry about doing stand-up, but I have been working on my Type 5. Say, did you guys know that I'm friends with 25 letters in the alphabet? Yeah, it's true. I don't know why. Anyway, one good tactic for audiences of students is using sentence frames or sentence stems. Sentence frames give students part of a sentence, then they fill in the rest. They can be a great tool to help them explain their thinking or use more complex sentence structures. For example, if students are working with partners, the teacher might give them sentence frames to guide their conversation, such as, "I agree with you because," or "Why do you think?" The teacher can model using the sentence frames and post them on an anchor chart for students to reference. Here's a sentence frame for you. I will pass the EC-6 because I used 240. Remember to check that link below. Okay, now that we've talked about developing students' oral language, we're ready for the second competency. Competency 2 is word analysis and identification skills. Under this topic, students are ready to learn the nuts and bolts of how to read words on their own. There are several different strategies readers can use to identify a word. Let's zoom in on structural analysis. Structural analysis, also known as morphemic analysis or simply word analysis, refers to the process of breaking words into meaningful parts, or morphemes, to determine what those parts mean, and putting them back together to determine the meaning of the whole word. These meaningful parts are often prefixes, root words, and suffixes. Here are some examples. Revisit. This can be broken into the prefix re and the root word visit. Colorful. This word has a root, color, and a suffix, full. Unbelievable. This one has the prefix un, root believe, and suffix able. On your exam, you might be asked to select a word that morphemic analysis would work on. Let's make it a fun one. On which one could you use morphemic or structural analysis? Coffee, early, decaffeinated, drowsy. The answer is decaffeinated because you can break the word into the prefix de, the root caffeine, and the suffix ate to understand that it means, this coffee better have caffeine in it so I can make it through this video. That was an important topic to go over, but there's more to know under this competency. To fully prepare and get the confidence you need, subscribe to the 240 study guide. We've got the link to it in our description. Let's keep moving to the third competency. Competency 3 is reading fluency. Do you know the 3 components of fluency? They are accuracy, prosody, and speed. You might be asked a question about automaticity, which is the ability to read words effortlessly. For example, a student may spend a significant amount of time decoding words to have strong accuracy, but this would lower their speed. Students need to develop their automaticity to be truly fluent readers. You'll need to know some strategies for improving students' fluency. Choral reading, partner reading, and reader's theater are all great examples. It's especially helpful to have students read texts at their independent level, and to have them reread the same text multiple times. Basically, just have students read, then read some more. I used to love to send a student to read to another person in the school, like a counselor, custodian, even the principal. They'd always come back glowing with pride, and it was great practice for fluency. That was just one piece of the puzzle for this competency. To really have the confidence you deserve, go subscribe to a 240 study guide. You can get the study guide for this test and all the other EC through 6 subtests. On to competency 4, reading comprehension and applications. Here, students move from learning to read to reading to learn. You need to know the difference between literal, inferential, and evaluative comprehension. And you'll need to be able to recognize which strategies or types of questioning are best to develop each kind of comprehension. To build literal comprehension, work on things like summarizing and identifying plot elements, like setting. For inferential comprehension, help students recognize cause and effect relationships and make predictions. To develop evaluative comprehension, model metacognition and help students make opinions about the text. To practice many of these skills, I loved using graphic organizers. When my team would be planning a reading lesson, I'd always say, "I've got a graphic organizer for that." So I wasn't as popular as the teacher who always brought in donuts, but your girl was pretty cool. I could talk about reading comprehension for days, but it's time to move on. Don't forget to stick around till the end of the video because I've got a practice comprehension question with your name on it. Here we are at the 5th competency, vocabulary development. In order for students to progress as readers, it's important that they understand the meaning of the words they're reading. So vocabulary instruction is an important part of teaching English language arts and reading. Most vocabulary is learned indirectly. Teachers should expose students to targeted words in multiple contexts. A great way to do this is to plan a thematic or integrated unit, so you can provide your students with lots of different opportunities to read, write, hear, and speak using the new terms. The more times a student comes across a vocabulary word, the more likely they are to make connections between those contexts and internalize the meaning of the word. Competency 6 is reading, inquiry, and research. I'm sure you're inquiring about what you'll need to research to pass this section. Well, sit back and relax because that's what I'm here for. We need to teach students the valuable skill of finding information from a variety of sources to answer questions. Here are the basic steps of the research process. First, develop a question to answer through research. This will become a thesis statement for high-level research. Next, locate credible sources with information that can be used to answer the research question. Then, create notes with paraphrased and summarized information from the sources. Finally, organize the information into a product to demonstrate findings from the research. This may be a graphic organizer, visual presentation, or expository essay. It's important to have a clear objective and a plan. And make sure students are starting with an open-ended question, like, why do volcanoes erupt? Is a better research question than, what temperature is magma? What I just talked about is just the tip of the volcano. There's lots more to learn in the 240 study guide. Click the link below so you can blow the top off your exam. So you can get a lava-ly score. So you can rock it. The 7th competency is writing conventions. This is all about how students develop in their use of grammar, spelling, and punctuation. I'm going to go over the most important things to know within the topic of spelling. Spelling development unfolds in a predictable sequence. Here are the stages you'll need to know. In the pre-communicative spelling stage, a child uses letters from the alphabet to represent words without demonstrating knowledge of letter-sound correspondence. The words appear as random strings of letters. In the semi-phonetic stage, some knowledge of letter-sound correspondence is apparent in a child's attempt to spell. It's common to see single letters used to represent whole words, syllables, or sounds in which multiple letters are conventionally used. As a child progresses to the phonetic spelling stage, they use a letter or group of letters to represent every sound heard in a word. Spelling choices still may not be conventional, but they're easily understood through the lens of letter-sound correspondence. The fourth stage is the transitional spelling stage, in which a child moves from depending solely on knowledge of letter-sound correspondence to incorporating knowledge of word structure and common visual representations of words in their spelling as well. More conventional spelling is present in the child's writing, but misspellings are still common and frequent. Last is the conventional spelling stage, when a student can apply knowledge of letter-sound relationships, general spelling rules, and morphology in their spelling. The child is better able to recognize misspellings, and the spelling in their writing is generally correct. Now you might be thinking, everybody uses autocorrect, we don't need to teach spelling anymore. But we do, because teaching students conventional spelling frees up some of their brain power so they can focus on what they're writing, like their purpose and audience. Speaking of purpose and audience, Competency 8 is written communication. As part of their journey as budding writers, students must understand that there are many different reasons to write. Quality writing instruction includes teaching students about task, or the writing assignment, purpose, which is the intention for writing, and intended audience, or the recipient of the writing piece. When students have the right tools, they can know their audience and accomplish their writing goals. Writing a letter to a real person is an example of writing for a meaningful, authentic purpose. When I taught, while we were studying animal needs, I had my students assess the animal enclosures at our local zoo and write a letter to our local zookeeper with their recommendations. Knowing their purpose and intended audience made them feel so powerful. That was the biggest thing to know, but there's so much more. I didn't even get to the steps of the writing process. So to be sure you're prepared, let 240 help you. Click the link in the description to get our EC-6 English Language Arts and Reading Study Guide. We're getting so close. 2 more competencies to go, and you can proudly say you've reviewed the whole framework of your exam. Competency 9 is viewing and representing. You may be asking yourself, viewing and representing what? This competency is all about media. Elementary students need direct instruction on and practice with interpreting media, such as computer, television, magazine, and radio. It's important to teach the different functions and purposes of media. In particular, provide and discuss examples of persuasive media, such as political cartoons, magazines, newspapers, TV and computer ads, and signs in stores or on the highway. Direct students to first look only at the pictures rather than the text to try to determine what the illustrator is trying to say. You can model this with slides or printed materials, asking students to determine the connotative and denotative meanings of the examples. After discussing how visuals enhance meaning through various colors, styles, pictures, or media, you can have students create their own advertisements. But make sure to give them some guidance, because kids will be kids and you never know what you're going to get. You made it to the finish line, to the top of the volcano, the 10th competency. This one is assessment of developing literacy. There are lots of different kinds of assessments to measure students' literacy skills. 2 important ones to know are formative and summative assessments. Formative assessments are assessments for learning. They're used to guide instruction, meaning they're administered to assess students' progress toward meeting a learning objective so teachers can adjust instruction as needed. They help teachers answer the question, what do I teach next? Examples of formative assessments are exit slips, running records, or simply observing students. Summative assessments are assessments of learning. They're used to gauge instruction by determining whether or not students mastered a learning objective. Teachers use them to answer the question, what did my students learn? Meaning, what do they know now, or what are they able to do now? Examples of summative assessments include quizzes, graded work at the end of a unit, or standardized assessments, like the Developmental Reading Assessment, or DRA. That's a really important part of assessment to know, but like I said, there's so much more you'll need to be ready to see on your test. To really make sure you're prepared, use the 240 Study Guide. It'll save you a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of worry, and possibly your job. You've already worked so hard. Take the next step to make sure you pass. Now, speaking of assessment, it's time for you to assess your knowledge of the topics we've covered today. Let's look at some practice questions to show you how those concepts can appear on the test. If you want a lot of practice questions, you can click the free practice test below. At the end, you get a score report on how well you did on the test. And then you can subscribe to 240 and get all the practice questions you need to be 100% confident for the test. Did I mention the 240 Study Guide has a money-back guarantee that you'll pass? Now for questions. Here's one from the first competency, oral language. A first grade teacher has informally assessed her students' oral language skills and identified certain students in need of support while orally answering comprehension questions. Which of the following activities would best support these students' oral language development? Expand vocabulary through reading a variety of genres. Schedule regular, formal assessments of their oral language skills. During whole class discussions, regularly call on these students to answer open-ended questions. Provide sentence stems or sentence frames to scaffold their oral language skills. This is the correct answer. Like we talked about at the beginning of this video, using sentence stems is an effective way to encourage the use of oral language skills while also providing support that will help build speaking confidence. Let's look at one from Competency 2. Here's one of those tricky structural analysis questions. Which of the following word sets would best support a lesson on structural analysis? Ate, eat, eating, eaten. Visit, revisit, visitor, visiting. Sweep, leap, heap, jeep. Late, ripe, hike, wire. This is the right choice. Like I said earlier in the video, structural analysis refers to breaking the word down into recognizable chunks to ease decoding. All of these words contain the word visit with varying prefixes and suffixes, so they would work as examples to explain the meaning of structural analysis. What about Competency 3, Fluency? What might those questions look like? A selection of students has been called aside for individual instruction based on the area they struggled in on a recent assessment. The teacher presents the students with a simple sentence, such as, "The cat ran very fast." The teacher reads the sentence one word at a time, with no intonation or expression. Then she models how when people read and speak, it is natural to emphasize certain words in the sentence. She tells the group, "Today we will be working on adding emphasis to a sentence and thinking about the effect that has on our understanding. I will call on you and tell you what word to emphasize, and then you will say the sentence, saying that specific word strongly." The teacher models once again, this time reading, "The cat ran very fast." Based on the nature of this activity, which area of reading fluency did these students need additional instruction in? Prosody, accuracy, speed, automaticity. Did you think I was going to show you a question about automaticity since I called it out earlier? Not this time. Through the question feedback in the study guide, I can see that automaticity is the ability to read words effortlessly. This activity is focusing on how to emphasize words and how that changes the meaning of a sentence, which would fall into the realm of prosody. So this is the answer. Now for the comprehension question that had your name on it. Mrs. Wright is reading a fiction story aloud to her class. She stops throughout to model the think aloud strategy. In her think aloud moments, she makes predictions about what will happen next and reflects on what the characters learn throughout each plot event. What level of reading comprehension is she modeling for her students? Literal comprehension, evaluative comprehension, inferential comprehension, circumstantial comprehension. Okay, right off the bat, we know that circumstantial comprehension isn't even one of the levels of comprehension, so we can ignore that one. This is the right one. The teacher was modeling the ability to understand what was read without it being stated explicitly, which is inferential comprehension. She's using her background knowledge, along with what's happening in the story, to make inferences about what might happen next and what the characters learn. Now let's look at a vocabulary question. How can a fourth grade teacher indirectly expose her students to content-specific vocabulary that they will need in their upcoming unit as a part of indirect and direct vocabulary instruction over the terms? Provide students with a list to define each word before the unit begins. Purposefully and frequently use the terms in class. Encourage students to use dictionaries when they come across unfamiliar words. Require students to find examples of the words used in the real world. This is the best choice. Purposefully and frequently using the terms in class will naturally expose them to the words and provide context for how they're used in a sentence. Since the teacher isn't directly defining or teaching these terms, it would be one of the various ways to indirectly expose them to the new vocabulary. Next up, reading, inquiry, and research. During a unit on conducting and writing research reports, a fifth grade teacher models each step of the research process by conducting her own research fully. She models choosing a topic, generating research questions, finding reliable sources, and pulling information from those sources to cite in her research. Which activity should the teacher model next to continue the steps of the research process? organize research and begin outlining her research report, adjust guiding research questions to meet the information she has found in her readings, begin drafting her essay, starting with a thesis statement, create a bibliography of the sources she'll use in her research report. This is the correct answer. Once the teacher has modeled how to find supporting details through research, the next step is organizing this data to then use while writing. She was in between steps 3 and 4 that I went over earlier in this video. What about a writing conventions question? Let's check one out. A first grade student writes the following sentence on the board, but means "my dog licks my hand." Which of the following does the student's sentence best demonstrate? Pre-communicative spelling, semi-phonetic spelling, phonetic spelling, transitional spelling? This is the right choice. This stage is when children have some letter awareness. They may spell a lengthy word with a few letters, such as play as PA or talk as TK. Let's look at a question from the 8th competency, written communication. Which of the following would be the most effective way to teach young children about task, purpose, and intended audience? Share and model writing samples that demonstrate appropriate style. Ask students to create their own writing prompts based on their interests. Give a unique writing task each day so students will have exposure to a wide variety of writing modes. Prioritize formal style before introducing informal, personal writing tasks. This one's the right answer. Concrete examples and modeling appropriate style would best help young students understand task, purpose, and intended audience. Moving on to competency 9. Which of the following would be the best strategy to teach an elementary student the various forms of persuasive media? Have students read a magazine article and watch a TV documentary for environmental issues? Have students create a commercial for environmental issues? Have students research a political cartoon, a computer editorial, and a highway billboard concerning environmental issues? Have a guest speaker address current events? We talked about having students make their own ads, so I thought this was the answer. But the question feedback feature helped me realize that creating a commercial wouldn't necessarily teach students about persuasive media. Rather, it would be a good way to assess their understanding. So this is actually the answer, since it involves various kinds of persuasive media. Are you ready for your last question? Here it is, from Assessment of Developing Literacy. Which of the following would be an appropriate summative assessment for 4th grade students who are learning about parts of speech? Having students independently label each part of speech for words in a given sentence? Guiding the students through labeling a different part of speech on a sentence at the beginning of each class? Asking students to submit an exit ticket about parts of speech to guide the next day's instruction? Inviting students to come to the board to identify parts of speech together? This is the correct answer. A summative assessment individually tests students' knowledge of a subject. Asking students to label parts of speech independently is a summative assessment, which can be used to determine whether students grasp the concept of parts of speech. Now, that's just a small sampling of practice questions to give you an idea about how these concepts are assessed on the test. Congratulations on finishing the video. If you found it helpful, give it a like. There's still plenty more to learn. Did you know that our study guide has 402 practice questions? If you really want to make sure you're prepared for the core subjects EC through 6 English Language Arts and Reading exam, take the next step and subscribe to the 240 Study Guide. It has hours of videos, so you can watch or listen whenever you like. It's test-aligned, so you know precisely what you need to study. And it has hundreds of practice questions, so you can be sure you're ready. And it has the money-back guarantee. So click the link below right now to get started.